Right, good evening everybody. This is System Chalk. Normally I like to start and keep it with Caius as much as possible, but it's never a dull moment when doing Morrowind lately. So I wanted to give a quick update on the status of the episode and probably explain why this will be a bit of a shorter one. GOG. So for those of you who play this game on GOG and otherwise, I noticed that there was at least a gigabyte of log files in my GOG Galaxy folder. I didn't actually look at the contents of them, but one, I need the space, and two, I cannot think of what GOG could possibly need with 1 gigabyte worth of logs. This unfortunately broke my GOG install, and this meant I needed to manually reconnect Morrowind, but this also meant that GOG quote-unquote helped by updating and verifying the contents, which then proceeded to break all of my mods. And so I probably spent 2.5 to 3 hours trying to get everything working again, and I'm now recording this very, very late on the day before, I guess morning of, technically, the episode. So this probably means I'm going to be a little bit shorter, and it also might mean that this is a little bit more error-prone than normal. But so far as I can tell, the mods that I installed are the same. The code fix, I believe I used the same settings as last time. But I wanted to start off the episode with a proper warning that things might be a little more goofy than usual, and I'll do my best to work through it. But for now, we will return to the story of
Caius, Spellsword, Dunmer, Eternal Champion. Still loaded up with a bunch of stuff in Caius's house, and I seem to recall that we were going to be reading the biography of Barenziah to start off this episode. I could also do some alchemy. You know what? I'll start by getting the obvious out of the way. Which I'm recording this also means that I've already been broadcasting for 5 hours, so apologies if the voice isn't where it needs to be. So as always, we start with the Restore Magica. That's one of the most important for me to work with. It's usually pretty clear which ones I'm gonna need, but it doesn't hurt to double check because I've definitely missed a lot of useful stuff due to assumptions. Next up, Stoneflower, I think, was for the Fortify personality. That's an easy one to deal with. That's an easy one to deal with. Razor Plumes and Trauma Root are sort of the next most logical, although at this point, let's see if we can get some Drain Willpower out as well. certainly no shortage of feathers. I think I'm also going to leave the vampire dust. I want to experiment with that later. Alright, so drain fatigue and personality if I can. This is mostly just because I want to try and get things that'll convert into money as easily as possible. It's a particularly good poison. Alright, restore agility and telekinesis if I must. Drain strength if possible. Store fatigue and health isn't bad. Alright. I might be missing a combo there, but it's not worth taking the time. So, let's get some reading done.
Biography of Queen Barenziah, Volume 2 by Stern Gamboge, Imperial Scribe. The first volume in this series told the story of Barenziah's origin heiress. Barenziah's origin heiress to the throne of Mournhold until her father rebelled against His Excellency Tiber Septim I and brought ruin to the province of Morrowind. Thanks largely to the benevolence of the Emperor, the child Barenziah was not destroyed with her parents, but reared by Count Sven of Darkmoor, a loyal imperial trustee. She grew up into a beautiful and pious child, trustful of her guardian's care. This trust, however, was exploited by a wicked orphan stable-boy at Count Sven's estate, who, with lies and fabrications, tricked her into fleeing Darkmoor with him when she turned 16. After many adventures on the road, they settled in Riften, a Skyrim city near the Morrowind borders. The stable-boy, Straw, was not altogether evil. He loved Barenziah in his own selfish fashion, and deception was the only way that he could think of that would cement possession of her. She, of course, felt only friendship towards him, but he was hopeful that she would gradually change her mind. He wanted to buy a small farm and settle down into a comfortable marriage, but at the time his earnings were barely enough to feed and shelter them. After only a short time in Riften, Straw fell in with a bold and villainous Khajiit thief named Theris, who proposed that they rob the Imperial Commandant's house in the central part of the city. Theris said that he had a client, a traitor to the Empire, who would pay well for any information they could gather there. Barenziah happened to overhear this plan and was appalled. She stole away from their rooms and walked the streets of Riften in desperation, torn between her loyalty to the Empire and her love for her friends. In the end, loyalty to the Empire prevailed over personal friendship, and she approached the Commandant's house, revealed her true identity, and warned him of her friend's plan. The Commandant listened to her tale, praised her courage, and assured her that no harm would come to her. He was none other than General Symmachus, who had been scouring the countryside in search of her since her disappearance, and had just arrived in Riften, hot in pursuit. He took her into his custody and informed her that far from being sent away to be sold, she was to be reinstated as the Queen of Mournhold as soon as she turned 18. Until that time, she was to live with the Septim family in the newly built imperial city, where she would learn something of government and could be presented at the imperial court. At the imperial city, Barenziah befriended Emperor Tiber Septim during the middle years of his reign. Tiber's children, particularly his eldest son and heir Pelagius, came to love her as a sister. The ballads of the day praised her beauty, chastity, wit, and learning. On her 18th birthday, the entire imperial city turned out to watch her farewell procession, preliminary to her return to her native land. Sorrowful as they were at her departure, all knew that she was ready for her glorious destiny as sovereign of the Kingdom of Mournhold. Biography of Queen Barenziah, Volume 3, by Stern Gambage, Imperial Scribe. In the second volume of this series, it was told how Barenziah was kindly welcomed to the newly constructed imperial city by Emperor Tiber Septim and his family, who treated her like a long-lost daughter during her almost one-year stay. After several happy months, there learning her duties as vassal queen under the empire, the imperial general Symmachus escorted her to Mournhold, where she took up her duties as queen of her people under his wise guidance. Gradually, they came to love one another and were married and crowned in a splendid ceremony at which the emperor himself officiated. After several hundred years of marriage, a son, Helseth, was born to the royal couple amid celebration and joyous prayer. Although it was not publicly known at the time, it was shortly before this blessed event that the Staff of Chaos had been stolen from its hiding place deep in the Mournhold mines by a clever, enigmatic bard known only as the Nightingale. 8 years after Helseth's birth, Barenziah bore a daughter, Morgiah, named after Symmachus' mother, and the royal couple's joy seemed complete. Alas, shortly after that, relations with the empire mysteriously deteriorated, leading to much civil unrest in Mournhold. After fruitless investigations and attempts at reconciliation, in despair, Barenziah took her young children and traveled to the imperial city herself to seek the ear of Emperor Uriel Septim VII. Symmachus remained in Mournhold to deal with the grumbling peasants and annoyed nobility, and to do what he could to stave off an impending insurrection. During her audience with the Emperor Barenziah, through her magical arts, came to realize to her horror and dismay that the so-called Emperor was an impostor, none other than the bard Nightingale who had stolen the Staff of Chaos. Exercising great self-control, she concealed this realization from him. That evening, news came that Symmachus had fallen in battle with the revolting peasants of Mournhold, and that the kingdom had been taken over by rebels. Barenziah at this point did not know where to seek help, or from whom. The gods that fateful night were evidently looking out for her, as if in redress for her loss. King Edwir of High Rock, an old friend of Uriel Septim and Symmachus, came by on a social call. He comforted her, pledged his friendship, and furthermore confirmed her suspicions that the Emperor was indeed a fraud, and that none other than Jagar Tharn, the Imperial Battle Mage, and one of Nightingale's many alter egos. Tharn had supposedly retired into seclusion from public work and installed his assistant, Rhea Silmain, in his stead. The hapless assistant was later put to death under mysterious circumstances. Supposedly a plot implicating her had been uncovered, and she had been summarily executed. However, her ghost appeared to Edwir in a dream and revealed to him that the true Emperor had been kidnapped by Tharn and imprisoned in an alternate dimension. Tharn had then used the Staff of Chaos to kill her when she attempted to warn the Elder Council of this nefarious plot. Together, Edwir and Barenziah plotted to gain the false Emperor's confidence. Meanwhile, another friend of Rhea's, known only as the Champion, who apparently possessed great, albeit untapped potential, was incarcerated at the Imperial dungeons. However, she had access to his dreams, and she told him to bide his time until she could devise a plan that would effect his escape. Then he could begin on his mission to unmask the impostor. Barenziah continued to charm and eventually befriend the Erstaz Emperor. By contriving to read his secret diary, she learned that he had broken the Staff of Chaos into 8 pieces and hidden them in far-flung locations scattered across Tamriel. She managed to obtain a copy of the key to Rhea's friend's cell and bribed a guard to leave it there as if by accident. Their champion, whose name was unknown even to Barenziah and Edwir, made his escape through the shift gate that Rhea had opened in an obscure corner of the Imperial dungeons, using her already failing powers. The champion was free at last, and almost immediately went to work. It took Barenziah several more months to learn the hiding places of all 8 staff pieces, through snatches of overheard conversation and the rare glances at Tharn's diary. Once she had the vital information, however, which she communicated to Rhea forthwith, who in turn passed it on to the champion, she and Edwir lost no time. They fled to Wayrest in his ancestral kingdom in the province of the High Rock, where they managed to fend off the sporadic efforts of Tharn's henchmen to haul them back to the Imperial City, or at the very least obtain revenge. Tharn, whatever else might be said of him, was no one's fool save Barenziah's, and he concentrated most of his efforts towards tracking down and destroying the champion. As all now know, the courageous, indefatigable, and forever nameless,
Not really.
champion was successful in reuniting the 8 sundered pieces of the Staff of Chaos. With it, he destroyed Tharn and rescued the true Emperor, Uriel Septim VII. Following what has come to be known as the Restoration, a grand state memorial service was held for Symmachus at the Imperial City, befitting the man who had served the Septim dynasty for so long and so well. Barenziah and good King Edwir had come to care deeply for one another during their trials and adventures, and were married in the same year shortly after their flight from the Imperial City. Her 2 children from her previous marriage with Symmachus remained with her, and a regent was appointed to rule Mournhold in her absence. Up to the present time, Queen Barenziah has been in Wayrest with Prince Helseth and Princess Morgaya. She plans to return to Mournhold after Edwir's death. Since he is already elderly when they wed, she knows that event, alas, cannot be far off as the elves reckon time. Until then, she shares the government of the kingdom of Wayrest with her husband, and seems glad and content with her finally quiet and happily unremarkable life.
All right, let's get these Sorry, I don't seem to have a jump button anymore. Oh, there we go. Let's try and get through the real Barenziah.
The Real Barenziah, Part 1 by Anonymous. 500 years ago in Mournhold, city of gems, there lived a blind widow and her only child, a tall, strapping young man. He was a miner, as was his father before him, a common laborer in the mines of the Lord of Mournhold, for his ability in magicka was small. The work was honorable, but paid poorly. His mother made and sold comberry cakes at the city market to help eke out their living. They did well enough, she said. They had enough to fill their bellies, no one could wear more than one suit of clothing at a time, and the roof leaked only when it rained. But Symmachus would have liked more. He hoped for a lucky strike at the mines, which would garner him a large bonus. In his free hours, he enjoyed hoisting a mug of ale in the tavern with his friends, and gambling with them at cards. He also drew the eyes and sighs of more than one pretty elven lass, although none held his interest for long. He was a typical young dark elf of peasant descent, remarkable only for his size. It was rumored that he had a bit of Nordic blood in him. In Symmachus' 13th year, there was a great rejoicing in Mournhold. A girl child had been born to the lord and lady. A queen, the people sang. A queen is born to us. For among the people of Mournhold, the birth of an heiress is a sure sign of future peace and prosperity. When the time came around for the royal child's rite of naming, the mines were closed, and Symmachus dashed home to bathe and dress his best. "I'll rush straight home and tell you about it," he promised his mother, who would not be able to attend. She had been ailing, and besides, there would be a great crush of people, as all Mournhold turned out to be part of the blessed event, and being blind, she would be unable to see anything anyway. "My son," she said, "before you go, fetch me a priest or a healer, else I may pass from the mortal plane ere you return." Symmachus crossed to her pallet at once and noted anxiously that her forehead was very hot and breathing shallow. He pried loose a slat of the wooden floor under which their small hoard of savings was kept. There wasn't nearly enough to pay a priest for healing. He would have to give what they had and know the rest. Symmachus snatched up his cloak and hurried away. The streets were full of folk hurrying to the sacred grove, but the temples were locked and barred. "Closed for the ceremony," read all the signs. Symmachus elbowed his way through the mob and managed to overtake a brown-robed priest. "After the rite, brother," the priest said. If you have the gold, I shall gladly attend to your mother. The Lord has bidden all clerics attend, and I, for one, have no wish to offend him." "My mother's desperately ill," Symmachus pled. "Surely my lord will not miss one lowly priest." "True, but the archcanon will. the priest said nervously, tearing his robe loose for Symmachus's desperate grip and vanishing into the crowd. Symmachus tried other priests and eventually a few mages, but no better result. Armored guards marched through the streets and pushed him aside with their lances, and Symmachus realized that the royal procession was approaching. As the carriage bearing the city's rulers drew abreast, Symmachus rushed out from the crowd and shouted, my lord, my mother is dying." "I forbid her to do so this glorious night," the lord shouted, laughing and scattering coin into the throng. Symmachus was close enough to smell the wine on the royal breath. On the other side of the carriage, his lady clutched the babe to her breast and stared slit-eyed at Symmachus, her nostrils flared in disdain. "Guards," she cried, "remove this oaf." Rough hands seized Symmachus. He was beaten and left dazed on the side of the road. Symmachus, head aching, followed in the wake of the crowd and witnessed the rite of naming from the top of the hill. He could see the brown-robed clerics and the blue-robed mages gathered near the high-born folk below. Barenziah. The name came dimly to Symmachus's ears as the high priest lifted the swaddled babe and proffered her to the twin moons on either side of the horizon. Jode rising, Jode setting. "Behold the Lady Barenziah, born to the land of Mournhold. Grant her thy blessing and thy counsel, ye kind gods, that she may ever rule well over Mournhold, its ken and its weal, its kith and its ilk." Bless her," all the people intoned along with their lord and lady, hands upraised. Only Symmachus stood silent, head bowed, knowing in his heart that his dear mother was gone. And in silence he swore a mighty oath that he should be his lord's bane, and in vengeance for his mother's needless death the child Barenziah he should have for his own bride, and that his mother's grandchildren should be born to rule over Mournhold. After the ceremony he watched impassively as the royal procession returned to the palace. He saw the priest to whom he'd first spoken. The man came gladly enough now in return for the gold Symmachus had and a promise of more afterward. They found his mother dead. The priest sighed and tucked away the pouch of gold coins away. "I'm sorry, brother. It's all right. You can forget the rest of the gold. There's aught I can do here. Likely—" "Give me back my money," Symmachus snarled. "You've done naught to earn it." He lifted his right arm threateningly. The priest backed away, about to utter a curse, but Symmachus struck him across the face before more than 3 words had left his mouth. He went down heavily, striking his head sharply on one of the stones that formed the fire pit. He died instantly. Symmachus snatched up the gold and fled the city. As he ran, he muttered one word over and over, like a sorcerer's chant. "Barenziah," he said. "Barenziah, Barenziah." Barenziah stood on one of the balconies of the palace, staring down into the courtyard where soldiers milled, dazzling in their armor. Presently they formed into ordered ranks and cheered as her parents, the lord and lady, emerged from the palace, clad from head to toe in ebony armor, long purple-dyed furred cloaks flowing behind. Splendidly caparisoned, shining black horses were brought for them. Shining black horses were brought before them, and they mounted and rode to their courtyard gates and turned to salute her. "Barenziah," they cried. "Barenziah, our beloved, farewell." The little girl blinked back tears and waved one hand bravely. Her favorite stuffed animal, a gray wolf cub she called Woofin, clutched to her breast with the other. She had never been parted from her parents before and had no idea what it meant, save that there was a war in the west and the name Tiber Septim was on everyone's lips, spoken in hate and dread. "Barenziah," the soldiers cried, lifting their lances and swords and bows. Then her dear parents turned and rode away, knights trailing in their wake until the courtyard was nearly emptied. Sometime after came a day when Barenziah was shaken awake by her nurse, dressed hurriedly, and borne from the palace. All she could remember of that dreadful time was seeing a huge shadow with burning eyes filling the sky. She was passed from hand to hand. Foreign soldiers appeared, disappeared, and sometimes reappeared. Her nurse vanished and was replaced by strangers, some more strange than others. There were days, or it may well have been weeks, of travel. One morning she woke to step out of the coach and into a cold place with a large gray stone castle amid empty, endless hills covered patchily with gray-white snow. She clutched Woofin to her breast in both hands and stood blinking and shivering in the gray dawn, feeling very small and very dark in all of this endless space, this endless gray-white space. She and Hannah, a brown-skinned, black-haired maid who had been traveling with her for several days, went inside the keep. A large gray-white woman with icy gray-golden hair was standing by a hearth in one of the rooms. She stared at Barenziah with dreadful, bright blue eyes. "She's very black, isn't she?" the woman remarked to Hannah. "I've never seen a dark elf before." "I don't know much about them myself, milady," Hannah said, "but this one's got red hair and a temper to match. I can tell you that. Take care, she bites, and worse." I'll soon train her out of that, the other woman sniffed. And what's that filthy thing she's got? Ugh! The woman snatched Woofin away and threw him into the blazing hearth. Barenziah shrieked and would have flung herself after him, but was held back despite her attempts to bite and claw at her captors. Poor Woofin was reduced to a tiny heap of charred ash. Barenziah grew like a weed, Excuse me. Transplanted to Skyrim Garden, a ward of the court Sven and his wife, the Lady Inga. Outwardly, that is, she thrived, but always there was a cold and empty place within. I've raised her as my own daughter, Lady Inga was wont to sigh as she sat gossiping when the neighboring ladies came to visit, but she's a dark elf, what can you expect? Barenziah was not meant to overhear these words, at least she thought she was not. Her hearing was keener than that of her Nordic hosts. Other less desirable dark elven traits evidently included pilfering, lying, and a little misplaced magic, just a small fire spell here and a little levitation spell there. And, as she grew older, a keen interest in boys and men who could provide very pleasant sensations, and to her astonishment, gifts as well. Inga disapproved of this last for reasons incomprehensible to Barenziah, so she was careful to keep it as secret as possible. She's wonderful with the children, Inga added, referring to their 5 sons, all younger than Barenziah. I don't think she'd ever let them come to harm. A tutor had been hired when Johnny was 6 and Barenziah 8, and they took their lessons together. She would have liked to train in arms as well, but the very idea scandalized Count Sven and Lady Inga, so Barenziah was given a small bow and allowed to play at target shooting with the boys. She watched them at arms practice when she could, sparred with them when no grown-up folk were about, and knew that she was good as or better than they. She's very proud, though, isn't she? Said one of the ladies who had whispered to Inga, and Barenziah, pretending not to hear, would nod silently in agreement. She could not help but feel superior to the Count and his lady. There was something about them that provoked contempt. Afterward, she came to learn that Sven and Inga were distant cousins of Darkmoor's Keep's last titled residents, and she finally understood. They were posers, impostors, not rulers at all. At least, they were not raised to rule. This thought made her strangely furious at them. A good clean hatred quite detached from resentment. She came to see them as disgusting and repellent insects who could be despised but never feared. Once a month, a courier came from the Emperor, bringing a small bag of gold for Sven and Inga and a large bag of dried mushrooms from Morrowind for Barenziah, her favorite treat. On these occasions, she was always made to look presentable, or at least as presentable as a skinny dark elf could be made to look in Inga's eyes, before being summoned in the courier's presence for a brief interview. The same courier seldom came twice, but all of them looked her over in as much the same way a farmer would look over a hog he is readying for market. In the spring of her 16th year, Barenziah thought the courier looked as if she were at last ready for market. Upon reflection, she decided that she did not wish to be marketed. The stable boy Straw, a big muscular blond lad, clumsy, gentle, and affectionate, and rather simple, had been urging her to run off for some weeks now. Barenziah stole the bag of gold the courier had left, took the mushrooms from a storeroom, disguised herself as a boy in one of Johnny's old tunics, and a pair of cast-off breeches, and on one fine spring night, she and Straw took the 2 best horses from the stable and rode hard through the night onward to Whiterun, the nearest city of any importance, and the place where Straw wanted to be. But Mournhold and Morrowind also lay eastward, and they drew Barenziah as a lodestone draws iron. In the morning, they abandoned the horses at Barenziah's insistence. She knew that they would be missed and tracked down, and she hoped to throw off any pursuers. They continued on foot until late afternoon, keeping to side roads, and slept for several hours in an abandoned hut, where they went on at dusk and came to Whiterun city gates just before dawn. Barenziah had prepared a pass of sorts for Straw, a makeshift document stating that an errand to a temple in the city for a local village lord. She herself glided over a wall with the help of a levitation spell. She had reasoned correctly, as it turned out, that by now the gate guards would have been alerted to keep an eye out for a young dark elven girl and a Nordic boy traveling together. On the other hand, unaccompanied country yokels like Straw were a common enough sight. Alone with papers, it was unlikely that he would draw attention. Her simple plan went smoothly. She met Straw at the temple, which was not far from the gate. She had been to Whiterun on a few previous occasions. Straw, however, had never been more than a few miles from Sven's estate, which was his birthplace. Together they made their way to a rundown inn in the poorer quarters of Whiterun. Gloved, cloaked, and hooded against the morning chill, Barenziah's dark skin and red eyes were not apparent, and no one paid any heed to them. They entered the inn separately. Straw paid an innkeeper for a single cubicle, an immense meal, and 2 jugs of ale. Barenziah sneaked in a few minutes later. They ate and drank together gleefully, rejoicing in their escape, and made love vigorously on the narrow cot. Afterwards, they fell into an exhausted, dreamless sleep. They stayed for a week at Whiterun. Straw earned a bit of money running errands, and Barenziah burgled a few houses at night. She continued to dress as a boy. She cut her hair short and dyed her flame-red tresses jet black to further disguise, and kept out of sight as much as possible. There were a few dark elves in Whiterun. One day, Straw got them work as temporary guards for a merchant caravan traveling east. The one-armed sergeant looked at her over dubiously. He chuckled. "Dark elf, ain't ya? Like setting a wolf to guard the sheep, that is. Still, I need arms, and we ain't going near enough Morrowind so you can betray us to your folks. Our homegrown bandits would as fain cut your throat as mine." The sergeant turned to give Straw an apprising look. Then he spun back abruptly towards Barenziah, whipping out his short sword. But she had her dagger out in the twinkling of an eye and was in a defensive stance. Straw drew his own knife and circled around the man's rear. The sergeant dropped his blade and chuckled again. "Not bad, kids, not bad. How are you with yon bow, Dark Elf?" Barenziah demonstrated her prowess briefly. "Aye, not bad at all. And ye keen of eye at night, boy, and of hearing tall times. A trusty Dark Elf makes as good as fighting man as any could ask for. I know. I served under Symmachus himself before I lost this arm and got invalidated out of the Emperor's army." "We could betray them. I know folk who'd pay well," Straw said later as they bedded down for their night at the ramshackle lodge, "or rob them ourselves. They're very rich, those merchants are, Barry." Barenziah laughed. "Whatever would you do with so much money? And besides, we need their protection for traveling quite as much as they need ours. We could buy a little farm, you and me, Barry, and settle down, all nice-like." "Peasant," Barenziah thought scornfully. Straw was a peasant and harbored nothing but peasant dreams. But all she said was, "Not here, Straw. We're too close to Darkmoor still. We'll have other chances further east." The caravan went only as far east as Sungard. The Emperor Tiber Septim I had done much in the way of building a relatively safe and regularly patrolled highways, but the tolls were steep, and his particular caravan kept to the side roads as much as possible to avoid them. This exposed them to the hazards of wayside robbers, both human and orcish, and to roving brigand bands of various races, but such were the perils of trade and profit. They had 2 such encounters before reaching Sungard, an ambush which Barenziah's keen ears warned them of in plenty of time for them to circle around and surprise the lurkers, and a night attack by a mixed band of Khajiit, humans, and wood elves. The later were a skilled band, and even Barenziah did not hear them sneaking up in time to give much warning. This time the fighting was fierce. The attackers were driven off, but 2 of the caravan's other guards were slain, and Straw got a nasty cut on his thigh before he and Barenziah managed to gash his Khajiit assailant's throat. Barenziah rather enjoyed this life. The garrulous sergeant had taken a liking to her, and she spent most of her evenings sitting around the campfire listening to his tales of campaigning in Morrowind with Tiber Septim and General Symmachus. This Symmachus had been made general after Mournhold fell, the sergeant said. "He's a fine soldier, boy. Symmachus is. But there isn't But there wasn't more in soldiery involved in that Morrowind business, if you take my meaning. But, well, you know all about that, I suspect." No, I don't remember," Barenziah said, trying to sound nonchalant. "I've lived most of my life in Skyrim. My mother married a Skyrim man. They're both dead, though. Tell me, what happened to the Lord and Lady of Mournhold?" The sergeant shrugged. "I never heard. Dead, I suspect. Twice a lot as fighting before the armistice got signed. It's pretty quiet now. Maybe too quiet. Like a calm before a storm. Say, boy, you going back there?" "Maybe," Barenziah said. The truth was that she was drawn irresistibly to Morrowind and Mournhold like a moth to a burning house. Straw sensed it and was unhappy about it. He was unhappy anyway, since they could not bed together, and she was supposed to be a boy. Barenziah rather missed it too, but not as much as Straw did, seemingly. The sergeant wanted them to sign on for the return trip, but gave them a bonus nonetheless when they turned the offer down, and parchments of recommendation. Straw wanted to settle down permanently near Sungard, but Barenziah insisted on continuing their travels east. "And the Queen of Mournhold by rights," she said, unsure whether this was true or if it was just a daydream that she had made up as a lost, bewildered child. "I want to go home. I need to go home." At least that at least was true. After a few weeks, they managed to get places in another caravan heading east. By the early winter, they were in Riften, nearing the Morrowind border. But as the weather had grown severe as the days passed, they were told no merchant caravans would be setting forth until mid-spring. Barenziah stood on top of the city walls and stared across the deep gorge that separated Riften from the snow-clad mountain wall guarding Morrowind beyond. "Barry," Straw said gently, "Morhold's a long way off yet, nearly as far as we've come already, and the lands between are wild, full of wolves and bandits and orcs and still worse creatures. We'll have to wait for spring." "The Silgrud Tower," Barry said, referring to the dark elven township that had grown up around the ancient minaret guarding the border between Skyrim and Morrowind. "The bridge guards won't let me across, Barry. They're crack Imperial troops. They can't be bribed. If you go alone. I won't try and stop you, but what will you do? Silgrud Tower is full of Imperial soldiers. Will you become a washing woman for them, or a camp follower?" "No," Barenziah said slowly, thoughtfully. Actually, the idea was not entirely unappealing. She was sure that she could earn a modest living by sleeping with the soldiers. She'd had a few adventures of that sort as they crossed Skyrim, when she'd dressed as a woman and slipped away from Straw. She'd only been looking for a bit of variety. Straw was sweet but dull. She'd been startled, but extremely pleased when the man she picked offered her money afterwards. Straw had been unhappy about it, though, and would shout for a while and then sulk for a few days afterward, if he caught her at it. He was quite jealous. He'd even threatened to leave her. Not that he ever did, or could. But the Imperial Guards were a tough but brutal lot, by all accounts, and Barenziah had heard some very ugly stories during their treks. The ugliest of them had come from the lips of ex-army veterans around the caravan campfire, and were proudly recounted. They'd been trying to shock her and Straw, she realized, but she also comprehended that there was some truth behind the wild tales. Straw hated that kind of dirty talk, and hated it more that she had to hear it, but there was a part of him that was fascinated nevertheless. Barenziah sensed this and had encouraged Straw to seek out other women, but he said that he didn't want anyone else but her. She told him candidly that she didn't feel that way about him, but she did like him better than anyone else. "Then why do you go with other men?" Straw had asked on one occasion. "I don't know." Straw sighed. "They say that dark elven women are like that." Barenziah smiled and shrugged. "I don't know. Or no, maybe I do. Yes, I do know." She turned and kissed him affectionately. "I guess that's all the explanation there is."
I'm just gonna see how long these are. Yeah, they're like 40 pages each. So I'm not crazy about the weight. Obviously, this is 12 in total. But I think half an hour of story is enough for starters. So before I go any further, let's just double check what we've got here. 6 House. Pretty much most of this is for sale, so 5 volumes. What?
And a fine day to you.
Yes, Amanda. What do you want?
I'm tempted to see what's available at the Mages Guild. I know we were just there recently.
Please join me.
I'm very happy to make your acquaintance.
I must say I find you most interesting right now. Please go ahead.
That's interesting. That's a very different...
May you walk.
I'm pretty sure she looks quite different from last time.
Warm greetings, Outlander.
Such useless creatures.
I see you have great understanding. Welcome.
I think it's possible that some of these didn't...
Good friend, this is an honor.
I think some of these didn't load properly. Alright, yeah, we've,
Well, I find myself in pleasant company. Please share your thoughts.
yeah, that's almost certainly different from the last one that I had, so I'm gonna have to,
An
I'm gonna have
honor
to
be
figure out
sure.
what's going on with some of these.
Dare to peruse my spell.
This is a wondrous
Yep.
encounter. Welcome.
Alright, I'm not 100% sure if I'm gonna be able to restore that, but I'm not gonna make it a, I'm not gonna make it a big deal.
An honor, to be sure. Well, I find myself in pleasant company. Please share your thoughts.
Narmok is pretty far out. I'm just taking a look at the map right now. So it wouldn't be terrible for me to do this right now, seeing as I'm already outside of Fyvek. Yeah, let's see if I can make it to Narmok.
An honor, to be sure.
The only thing I'm a little nervous about is given that I know this isn't
Welcome, friend.
whatever
You're
adjusted
nearly-
the whatever adjusted the portraits. I'm not sure if there's anything else that isn't enabled.
Good day, Outlander. I am Balmora's Caravaneer. Tell me your destination, and I'll see if I can help you.
We make a special trip just for you. Same low price.
Well, at least try and get to Alderaan.
There's someone watching me. I can tell.
Apparently they've stopped refilling the supply chest.
Oh, greetings. How do you do? May we talk?
That's it. She's gone too far. I'll see her disgraced before the council. Yes.
What if I put on my bargaining shoes?
How wonderful. Welcome, Outlander.
I suspect she's not gonna buy. Oh, okay. I can shut up. Not the most exciting sale I've ever made, but clears out some space.
What do you think of our city, Outlander?
How about sharing the wealth?
I want Narmok, not Margan. Yeah, I think it's better that I just walk. We'll see if there's any labels, otherwise I'll just walk straight forward. Yeah, we'll try that next one a little bit further. Sort of interesting because I've only ever known what I was experiencing before. It's interesting to try and see if I can notice the differences this was unexpected. This clearly isn't the way that I took last time, but it's doing the trick. The important thing too is that I'm just looking to go north of Narmok. I don't actually need to be exactly at the location. Although it probably wouldn't hurt. I'm looking for Malapi. Definitely remember this path well. I suppose in the worst case scenario I'll be able to take a look at, yep. I should double check that the water's the way that I... Oh, yeah, that's fine. Suppose I'll take a minute, stop by Narmok and see if anybody can tell me about this location. Otherwise, it looks like I've been all over this area. Seem to remember a little difficulty with some crashes here. Hello.
You're in Narmok. Go ahead. You ask the questions, I'll do the answering.
Well, no luck as far as,
Reading that. That's right, there's a pair of them that wander about north of here. They've come near the town a few times. We drove them off. I'm sure they'll be back unless someone does something.
Go ahead, Outlander. What do you need?
it's possible there may be other villagers that know this Malapi location, but I'm gonna content myself with finding it on my own. Actually, try going north proper first. Don't know if I remember this person. Possibly a sleeper.
You've betrayed Lord Dagoth. Taste his vengeance. You will die, false one. Your flesh will feed us all. It's the hour of our awakening. He comes forth in his glory, and his people shall rejoice, and his enemies shall scatter like dust. Prophecies say Lord Nerevar will come again to drive the foreigners from the land and restore the Dunmer and Morrowind to its ancient glory.
Well, if you're not going to attack me... Something tells me this is going to be a bit of a perilous journey. Sorry, I just need a quick minute for some water. So it's definitely a bit of a struggle after doing a long broadcast to do this again, but I'll try and go as long as I can. Sorry about that. So we're looking for north. So I'm gonna go on land. I want to try and at least draw myself to a proper north. What I might want to consider as well is to try and find a path again. Leave me alone. This is the way I came in. This has pretty quickly become... Oh, hang on. It's definitely pushing the edge of what pushing the edge of what I'd call, well, I mean, it's north of Normok, but it's not precise. Let's see what it is. It's probably just a 2. Alright. I'm so happy that I preserved the bug and not the faces. Yep, well. I don't remember him looking like this, but... Oh, yes. Need to remember Soul Trap as well. I don't know if that's me just being out of soul gems or out of soul gems that can contain. I'm curious if I bring that back to,
Die, Fixer! Stupid!
I'm mildly curious if I bring the news of the death to the debtor or the indebted, or sorry, the yeah. For now, I'm gonna get my money. Curse.
You'll be dead soon.
So I'd love to bring these along. Well, let's see if I can carry it. gonna assume this is too much. Maybe not. It's all practice. I do seem to be running a little low though, so I'm not sure if I want to keep doing this. The thing that's a little odd is, normally at this level it says that it's too high for me to try. Which means I've either gotten better or the mods were affecting that. Let's see if I try a journeyman's. Alright, well, that answers that.
Feyfoken, Book 3 by Wogan Jarth. Or Wan Joth, maybe? Tharbad had at last seen the power of the quills of the great sage, continuing his tale. Enchanted with the Daedra Feyfoken, servitor of Clavicus Vile, it had brought him a great wealth and fame as the scribe of the weekly bulletin of the Temple of Oriel. But he realized that it was the artist, and he merely the witness to its magic. He was furious and jealous. With a cry, he snapped the quill in half. He turned to finish his glass of mead. When he turned around, the quill was intact. He had no other quills but the one that he had enchanted, so he dipped his finger into the inkwell and wrote a note to Gorgos in big sloppy letters. When Gorgos returned with a new batch of congratulatory messages from the temple praising his latest bulletin, he handed the note and the quill to the messenger boy. The note read, "Take this quill back to the Mages Guild and sell it. Buy me another quill with no enchantments." Gorgos didn't know what to make of the note, but he did as he was told. He returned a few hours later. "They wouldn't give us any gold back for it," said Gorgos. "They said that it wasn't enchanted. I said, 'What are you talking about? You enchanted it right here with the Feyfoken soul gem.' And they said, 'Well, there ain't a soul in it now. Maybe you did something and it got loose.'" Gorgos paused to look at his master. Tharbad couldn't speak, of course, but he seemed even more than usually speechless. "Anyway, I threw the quill away and got you a new one, like you said." Tharbad studied the new quill. It was white-feathered, with while his old feather had been dove-gray. It felt good in his hand. He sighed with relief and waved the messenger lad away. He had a bulletin to write, and this time without any magic except for his own talent. Within 2 days' time, he was nearly back on schedule. It looked plain, but it was entirely his. Tharbad felt a strange reassurance when he ran his eyes over the page and noticed some slight errors. It had been a long time since the bulletin contained any errors. In fact, Tharbad reflected happily that there were probably other mistakes still in the document that he was not seeing. He was finishing a final whirl of plain calligraphy on the borders when Gorgos arrived with some messages from the temple. He looked through them all quickly until one caught his eye. The wax seal on the letter read Feyfoken. With complete bafflement, he tore it open. "I think you should kill yourself," it read in perfectly gorgeous script. He dropped the letter to the floor, seeing sudden movement on the bulletin. Feyfoken script leapt from the letter and coursed over the scroll in a flood, translating his shabby document into a work of sublime beauty. Tharbad no longer cared about the weird croaking quality of his voice. He screamed for a very long time, and then he drank, heavily. Gorgos brought Tharbad a message from Vanderthil, the secretary of the temple, early Fredas morning, but it took the scribe until mid-morning to work up the courage to look at it. Good morning. I am just checking in on the bulletin. You usually have it on Turtis night. I'm curious. You planning something special? Vanderthil. Thurbad responded, Vanderthil, I'm sorry, I've been sick. There won't be a bulletin this Sunday. And he handed the note to Gorgas before retiring to his bath. When he came back an hour later, Gorgos was just returning from the temple, smiling. Vanderthil and the archpriest went crazy. They said that it was your best work ever. Thurbad looked at Gorgos, uncomprehending. Then he noticed that the bulletin was gone. Shaking, he dipped his finger in the inkwell and scrawled the words, What did the note I sent with you say? You don't remember? Asked Gorgos, holding back a smile. He knew the master had been drinking a lot lately. I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, Vanderthil, here it is. Sorry it's late. I've been having severe mental problems lately. Tharbad. Since you said here it is, I figured you wanted me to bring the bulletin along, so I did. And like I said, they loved it. I bet you get 3 times as much letters this Sundays. Tharbad nodded his head, smiled, and waved the messenger lad away. Gorgos returned back to the temple, while his master turned to his writing plank and pulled out a fresh sheet of parchment. He wrote with the quill, What do you want, Fey Falcon? The words became, Goodbye. I hate my life. I have cut my wrists. Tharbad tried another tact. Have I gone insane? The words became, Goodbye. I have poison. I hate my life. Why are you doing this to me? I, Thurbad Hlaalu, cannot live with myself and my ingratitude. That's why I've put this noose around my neck. Thurbad picked up a fresh parchment, dipped his finger in the inkwell, and proceeded to rewrite the entire bulletin. While his original draft, before Feyfolken had altered it, had been simple and flawed, the new copy was a scrawl. Lowercase i's were undotted, g's looked like y's, sentences ran into the margins and curled up and all over like serpents. Ink from the first page leaked onto the second page. When he yanked the pages from the notebook, a long tear nearly divided the third page in half. Something about the final result was evocative. Thurbad at least hoped so. He wrote another note, reading simply, Use this bulletin instead of the piece of shit I sent you. When Gorgos returned with the new messages, Thurbad handed the envelope to him. The new letters were all the same, except for one from his healer, Telemichael. Tharbad, we need you to come in as soon as possible. We've received reports from Black Marsh about a strain of the Crimson Plague that sounds very much like your disease, and we need to re-examine you. Nothing is definite yet, but we're going to see what our options are. It took Tharbad the rest of the day and 15 drams of the stoutest mead to recover. The largest part of the next morning was spent recovering from this means of recovery. He started to write a message to Vanderthil. What do you think of the new bulletin? With his quill. Feyfolken's improved version was, I'm going to ignite myself on fire because I'm a dying no-talent. Tharbad rewrote the note using his finger and ink message. When Gorgos appeared, he handed him the note. There was one message in Vanderthil's handwriting. It read, Tharbad, not only are you divinely inspired, but you have a great sense of humor. Imagine us using those scribbles you sent instead of the real bulletin. You made the Archbishop laugh heartily. I cannot wait to see what you have next week. Yours fondly, Vanderthil. The funeral service a week later brought out far more friends and admirers than Tharbad Hlaalu would have believed possible. The coffin, of course, had to be closed, but that didn't stop the mourners from filling into the lines and touching its smooth oak surface, imagining it as the flesh of the artist himself. The Archbishop managed to rise to the occasion and deliver a better-than-usual eulogy. Tharbad's old nemesis, the secretary before Vanderthil, Elfers, came in from Cloudrest, wailing and telling all who would listen that Tharbad's suggestions had changed the direction of her life. When she heard Tharbad had left his quill in his final testament, she broke down in tears. Vanderthil was even more inconsolable until she found a handsome and delightfully single young man. I can hardly believe he's gone, and I never even saw him face to face or spoke to him, she said. I saw the body, but even if he hadn't been all burned up, I wouldn't have been able to tell if it was him or not. I wish I could tell you that there'd been a mistake, but there was plenty of medical evidence, said Telemichael. I supplied some of it myself. He was a patient of mine, you see. Oh, said Vanderthil. Was he sick or something? He had the Crimson Plague years ago. That's what took away his voice box, but appeared to have gone into complete remission. Actually, I just sent him a note telling him the words to that effect the day before he killed himself. You're that healer, exclaimed Vanderthil. Tharbad's messenger boy Gorgos told me that he had just picked up that message when I sent mine, complimenting him on the new primitive design for the bulletin. It was amazing work. I never would have told him this, but I had begun to suspect that he was stuck in an outmoded style. It turned out that one last work of genius before going out in a blaze of glory, figuratively and literally. He had one last work of genius. Vanderthil showed the healer Thalbert's last bulletin, and Telemichael agreed that its frantic, nearly illegible style spoke volumes about the power and majesty of the god Ora-Il. Now I'm thoroughly confused, said Vongeldak. About which part? Said the great sage. I think the tale is pretty straightforward. Feyfoken made all the bulletins beautiful, except for the last one, the one that Thalbad did for himself, said Taxum thoughtfully. But why did he misread the notes from Vanderthil and the healer? Did the Feyfoken change those words? Perhaps, smiled the great sage. Or did Feyfoken change Thalbert's perceptions of those words? Asked Vongeldak. Did Feyfoken make him mad after all? Very likely, said the great sage. But what would it mean that the Feyfoken was a servitor of Shegarath, said Vongeldak. And you said that he was a servitor of Clavicus Vile. Which was he? An agent of mischief or an agent of insanity? The will was surely altered by Feyfoken, said Taxum, and that's the sort of thing that a servitor of Clavicus Vile would do to perpetuate the curse. As an appropriate ending to the tale of the scribe and his cursed quill, smiled the great sage, I will let you read into it as you will.
Sorry for the rough reading on that last one. Alright, this was a little shorter than I was expecting. I do want to get back to Alderun. Apparently I'm going to take the long way as much as I'd love to run over mountains.
Fair travels, friend.
Maybe I could give him the slip. This one's been chasing me. Yep. So I definitely wouldn't mind a Silt Strider trip given the time, but I could also just sleep in my own bed. I will see if I can unload that alchemy gear though. This is always a hard one to handle for the price. I should probably stop by the Rat in the Pot first.
You wish to
Is
speak?
there something I can do for you?
Yes,
Oh, Outlander, did you want something?
I don't believe I've seen a dark elf with such a grand outfit, with such a grand outfit, in some time. Can I help you? I knew he was in debt. He went off to seek his fortune in some place called Malapi, northeast of Narmak. I haven't heard from him since. All I know is that it's near Narmak. Perhaps you can find more out there.
I mean, kind of.
My brother Ruinstoin is dead, and the Kimona Tong said that he owed them money, which I don't dispute, but now they say I owe my brother's debts. I just don't have the money. I can't pay what I don't have, can I?
So I am slightly curious about whether or not this is,
There's someone watching me.
Its scent is unfamiliar.
How about sharing the wealth?
I must say, I find
I've
you most
lots to
interesting
show.
right now. Please go ahead.
alright. This is always a bit of a struggle. $1,400.
An honor, to be sure.
Yeah, that won't do.
greetings. How do you do? May we talk? Oh, greetings. How do you do? May we talk?
Interesting.
Oh, greetings. How do you do? May we talk?
Start. Perfect.
An honor, to be sure.
I'm Aranil, the High Elf Guild Guide. I provide instantaneous transport between various Mages Guild halls on Vardenfell. What is your destination? I can also help with local information. Do you need services? Are you looking for some specific place or for someone in particular?
Just Palmora, thank you.
Well, I find myself in pleasant company.
Greeted
Please share your
friend,
thoughts.
welcome.
It's a little much.
If there's anything I can do, I am humbly at your service.
Go ahead, Outlander. What do you need?
Alright, let's just sell the spare book, so, Fey Token I don't have, so I'm keeping that. Worth a try. Actually, before I go too much further, let's deal with anything else. Hang on to that for a minute. That was what the person who owed the debt was carrying. Just want to make sure that I'm dealing with any negative effects first, and then I can start selling the rest. Alright, I wouldn't normally want to get rid of Cure Poison, but it is taking up weight.
I'm listening.
I'm gonna try and be a little bit more strict in what I keep.
Is there something you need?
Selling these specific levitates because of their weight. A little optimistic. And our old friend Revere. What time is it? 2 a.m.
What, cousin?
Is something you need?
Is there something I can
Go
do
ahead.
for you?
I am listening.
You've ascended to level 29. The results of hard work and dedication always look like a little luck to saps, but you know you've earned every ounce of your success.
Not the most exciting numbers, but I'm not going to do alchemy. I'm just going to sort this. Not the most, not the brightest way that I've sorted that, but I don't know if this counts as numbered or not. I'm going to hang on to that for now. And against my better judgment, I'm going to do another episode of The Real Barenziah.
The Real Barenziah Part 2 by Anonymous. Barenziah and Straw settled into Riften for the winter, taking a cheap room in the slummier section of town. Barenziah wanted to join the Thieves Guild, knowing that there would be trouble if she were caught freelancing. One day in the barroom, she caught the eye of a known member of the guild, a bold young Khajiit named Theris. She offered to bet him if she would sponsor her membership. He looked her over, grinning, and agreed, but said that she'd have to pass an initiation. What sort of initiation? Ah, Theris said. Pay up first, sweetness. This passage has been censored by order of the temple. Straw was going to kill her, and maybe Theris too. What in Tamriel had possessed her to do such a thing? She cast an apprehensive look around the room, but the other patrons had lost their interest and gone back to their own business. She did not recognize any of them. This wasn't the inn where she and Straw were staying. With luck, it'd be a while or never before Straw found out. Theris was by far the most exciting and attractive man she had yet met. He not only told her about the skills she needed to become a member of the Thieves Guild, but also trained her in them himself, or else introduced her to people who could. So I think I said by far the most. I might have said not instead. Anyways. Among these was a woman who knew something about magic. Katisha was a plump and matronly Nord. She was married to a smith, had 2 teenage children, was perfectly ordinary and respectable, except that she was very fond of cats, and by logical inference, their humanoid counterparts, the Khajiit. Had a talent for certain kinds of magic and cultivated rather odd friends. She taught Barenziah an invisibility spell and schooled her in other forms of stealth and disguise. Katisha mingled magical and non-magical talents freely, using one set to enhance the other. She's not a member of the Thieves Guild, but was fond of Theris in a motherly sort of way. Barenziah warmed to her as she never had toward any woman, and over the next few weeks she told Katisha about herself. She brought Straw there too sometimes. Straw approved of Katisha, but not of Theris. Theris found Straw interesting and suggested to Barenziah that they arrange what he called a threesome. Absolutely not, Barenziah said firmly, grateful that Theris had broached the subject in private for once. He wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. Theris smiled his charming triangular feline smile and sprawled lazily on his chair, stretching his limbs and curling his tail. You might be surprised, both of you. Pairing is so boring. Barenziah answered with a glare. Or maybe you wouldn't like it with that country bumpkin of yours, Sweetness. Would you mind if I brought along another friend? Yes, I would. If you're bored with me, you and your friend can find someone else. She was a member of the Thieves' Guild now. She had passed her initiation. She found Theris useful, but not essential. Maybe she was a bit bored with him, too. She talked to Katisha about her problems with men, or what she thought were her problems with men. Katisha shook her head and told her that she was looking for love, not sex, and that she'd know the right man when she found him, that neither Straw nor Theris was the right one for her. Barenziah cocked her head to one side quizzically. They say dark elven women are prostitutes, she said, although she was dubious. You mean promiscuous? Although some do become prostitutes, I suppose, Katisha said as an afterthought. Elves are promiscuous when they're young, but perhaps you'll outgrow it. Perhaps you're beginning to already, she added hopefully. She liked Barenziah and had grown to be quite fond of her. You ought to meet some nice elven boys, though. If you go on keeping company with Khajiits and humans, and what have you, you'll find yourself pregnant in next to no time. Barenziah smiled involuntarily at the thought. I'd like that, I think. But it would be inconvenient, wouldn't it? Babies are a lot of trouble, and I don't even have my own house yet. How old are you, Barry? 17? Well, you're a year or two yet before you're fertile, unless you're very unlucky. Elves don't have children readily with other elves after that, even so you'll be all right if you stick with them. Barenziah remembered something else. Straw wants me to buy a farm and marry me. Is that what you want? No, not yet. Maybe someday. Yeah, someday, but not if I can't be queen. And not just any queen, but the Queen of Mournhold. She said this determinedly, almost stubbornly, as if to drown out any doubt. Katisha chose to ignore this last comment. She was amused at the girl's hyperactive imagination and took it as a sign of a well-functioning mind. I think Straw will be a very old man before someday comes, Barry. Elves live for a very long time. Katisha's face briefly wore the envious, wistful look that humans got when contemplating the 1,000-year lifespan elves had been granted by the gods. True, few ever actually lived that long, and as disease and violence took their respective tolls, but they could, and one or two of them actually did. I like old men too, Barry said. Katisha laughed. Barenziah fidgeted impatiently while Theris sorted through the papers on the desk. He was being meticulous and methodical, carefully replacing everything just as he'd found it. They'd broken into a nobleman's household, leaving Straw to hover outside as a lookout. Theris had said that it was a simple job, but very hush-hush. He hadn't even wanted to bring any other guild members along. He said that he knew he could trust Barry and Straw, but no one else. Tell me what you're looking for and I'll find it, Barry whispered urgently. Theris's night sight wasn't as good as hers, and he didn't want her to magic up even a small orb of light. She'd never seen such a luxurious place, not even the Darkmoor Castle of Count Sven and Lady Inga, where she had spent her childhood, compared to it. She gazed around in wonder as they had made their way through the ornately decorated and hugely echoing downstairs rooms, but Theris didn't seem interested in anything but the desk in the small book-lined study of the upper floor. Shh, he hissed angrily. Someone's coming, Barry said. A moment before the door opened and the two dark figures stepped into the room. Theris gave her a violent shove towards them and sprang to the window. Barenziah's muscles went rigid. She couldn't move or even speak. She watched helplessly as one of the figures, the smaller one, leapt after Theris. There were two quick, silent stabs of blue light, and then Theris folded over into a small heap. Outside the study, the house had come alive with hastening footsteps and voices calling out in alarm, and a clank of armor that the clank of armor hurriedly put on. The bigger man, a dark elf by the looks of him, half lifted, half dragged Theris to the door and thrust him into the waiting arms of another elf. A jerk of the first elf's head sent his smaller blue-robed companion after him. He then sauntered over to inspect Barenziah, who was once again able to move, although her head throbbed maddeningly when she tried to. Open your shirt, Barenziah, the elf said. Barenziah gawked at him and clutched it close. You're a girl, aren't you, Barry? He said, softly. You should have stopped dressing as a boy months ago, you know. You're only drawing attention to yourself, and calling yourself Barry. Is your friend Straw too stupid to remember anything else? It's a common elven name, Barenziah defended. The man shook his head sadly. Not among dark elves it isn't, my dear. But you wouldn't know that much about dark elves, would you? I regret that, but it couldn't be helped. No matter. I shall try to remedy it. Who are you? Barenziah demanded. Aye, so much for fame, the man shrugged, smiling wryly. I am Symmachus, my lady Barenziah, General Symmachus of his awesome and terrible majesty Tiber Septim the First Imperial Army, and I must say that it's a merry chase that you've led me throughout Tamriel, or this part of it anyway. Although I guessed correctly that you'd head for Morrowind eventually, you had a bit of luck. A body was found in Whiterun that was thought to be Straw's, so we stopped looking after the pair of you. That was careless of me, yet I'd not have thought that you'd have stayed together this long. Where is he? Is he all right? She asked in genuine trepidation. Oh, he's fine. For now. In custody, of course. He turned away. You care for him, then? He said, and then suddenly stared at her with fierce curiosity. Out of red eyes that seemed strange to her, except in her own seldom-seen reflection. He's my friend, Barenziah said. The words came out in a tone that sounded dull and hopeless to her own ears. Symmachus, a general in the Imperial army no less, said to have the friendship and ears of Tiber Septim himself. Aye, you seem to have several unsuitable friends, if you'll forgive me for saying so, my lady. Stop calling me that. She was irritated by the general's seeming sarcasm, but he only smiled. As they talked, the bustle and flurry in the house died away. Although she could still hear people, presumably the residents, whispering together not far off, the tall elf perched himself on a corner of the desk. He seemed quite relaxed and prepared to stay a while. Then it occurred to her. Several unsuitable friends, he said. This man knew all about her, or seemed to know enough anyway, which amounted to the same thing. What's going to happen to them? To me? Ah. As you know, this house belongs to the commander of the Imperial troops in this area, which means to say that it belongs to me. Barenziah gasped, and Symmachus looked up sharply. What, you didn't know? Why are you so rash, milady, even for 17? You must always know what it is you do or get yourself into. But the guild wouldn't have... Barenziah was trembling. The Thieves' Guild would never have attempted a mission that crossed Imperial policy. No one dared oppose Tiber Septim, at least no one she knew of. Someone at the guild had bungled, badly, and now she was going to pay for it. I dare say it's unlikely that Theris had guild approval for this. In fact, I wonder... Symmachus examined the desk carefully, pulling out the drawers. He selected one and placed it on top of the desk and removed the false bottom. There was a folded sheet of parchment inside. It seemed to be a map of some sort. Barenziah edged closer. Symmachus held it away from her, laughing. Rash indeed. He glanced it over and then folded and replaced it. You advised me a moment ago you were to seek after knowledge. So I did. Suddenly he seemed to be in high good humor. You must be going, my dear lady. He shepherded her down her to the door, down the stairs, and out into the night air. No one was about. Barenziah's eyes darted toward the shadows. She wondered if she could outrun him or elude him somehow. You're not thinking of attempting to escape, are you? Aye, don't you want to hear first what my plans for you are? She thought that he sounded a bit hurt. Now that you mention it, yes. Perhaps you'd rather hear about your friends first. No. He looked gratified at this. It was evidently the answer that he wanted, though thought Barenziah. But it was also the truth, since she was concerned while she was concerned for her friends, especially Straw, she was far more concerned for herself. You will take your place as the rightful queen of Mournhold. Symmachus explained that this had been his and Tiber Septim's plan for her all along, that Mournhold, which had been under military rule for the dozen or so years since she had been away, was gradually to be returned to civilian government, under the Empire's guidance, of course, and as part of the imperial province of Morrowind. Why was I sent to Darkmoor? Barenziah asked, hardly believing anything that she had just been told. For safekeeping, naturally. Why did you run away? Barenziah shrugged. I saw no reason to stay. I should have been told. You would have been by now. I had in fact sent for you to be removed to the Imperial City to spend some time as part of the Emperor's household, but of course you had, shall we say, absconded by then. As for your destiny, it should be, and should have been quite obvious to you. Tiber Septim does not keep those he has no use for. What else could you be that would be of use to him? I know nothing of him, nor for that matter of you. Then know this, Tiber Septim rewards friends and foes alike according to their deserts. Barenziah chewed on that for a few moments. Straw has deserved well of me, and has never done anyone any harm. He is not a member of the Thieves' Guild. He came along to protect me. He earns our keep by running errands, and he... Symmachus waved at her impatiently to silence. I know all about Straw, he said, and about Theris. He stared at her intently. So, what would you? She took a deep breath. Straw wants a little farm. If I am to be rich, then I would like for one to be given to him. Very well. He seemed astonished at this, and then pleased. Done. He shall have it. And Theris? He betrayed me, Barenziah said calmly. Theris should have told her what the risks of the job entailed. Besides, he'd pushed her right into the enemy's arms in an attempt to save himself. Not a man to be rewarded. Not, in fact, a man to be trusted. Yes, and? Well, he shouldn't be made to suffer for it. He should be made to suffer for it, shouldn't he? That seems reasonable. What form should said suffering take? Barenziah balled her hands into fists. She would have liked to beat and claw the Khajiit herself, but considering the turn events had taken, that didn't seem very queenly. A whipping. Would 20 stripes be too many, do you think? I don't want to do him any permanent injury, you understand. Just teach him a lesson. Aye, of course. Simicus grinned at this, and then his features suddenly set, and he became serious. Shall be done, your highness, milady, Queen Barenziah of Mournhold. He then bowed to her, a sweeping, courtly, ridiculously wonderful bow. Barenziah's heart leapt. She spent 2 days at Simicus' apartment, during which she was kept very busy. There was a dark elven woman named Drillane who saw to her needs, although she did not exactly seem a servant since she took her meals with them. Nor did she seem to be Simicus' wife or lover. Drillane looked amused when Barenziah asked her about it. She simply said that she was in the general's employ and did whatever was asked of her. With Drillane's assistance, several fine gowns and pairs of shoes were ordered for her, plus a riding habit and boots, along with other small necessities. Barenziah was given a room to herself. Simicus was out a great deal. She saw him most at mealtimes, but said little about himself or what he had been doing. He was cordial and polite, quite willing to converse on most subjects, and seemed interested in anything that she had to say. Drillane was much the same. Barenziah found them pleasant enough, but hard to get to know, as Katisha would have put it. She felt an odd twinge of disappointment. These were the first dark elves with whom she'd associated closely. She had expected to feel comfortable with them, to feel at last that she belonged somewhere, with somebody as part of something. Instead, she found herself yearning for her Nordic friends, Katisha and Straw. When Simicus told her they were to set out for the Imperial City on the morrow, she asked if she could say goodbye to them. Katisha? He asked. Aye. Then I suppose I owe her something. She it was who led me to you by telling the name of a lonely dark elven girl named Barry who needed elven friends, and who sometimes dressed as a boy. She has no association with the Thieves' Guild, apparently, and no one associated with the Thieves' Guild seems to know your true identity, save Theris. That as well. I prefer that your former guild membership not be made public knowledge. Please speak of it to no one, your highness. Such a past does not become an imperial queen. No one knows but Straw and Theris, and they won't tell anyone. No, he smiled a curious little smile. No, they won't. He didn't know that Katisha knew then, but still, there was something about the way that he said it. Straw came to their apartment on the morning of their departure, and they were left alone in the salon, although Barenziah knew that the other elves were within earshot. He looked drawn and pale. They hugged one another silently for a few minutes. Straw's shoulders were shaking, and tears were rolling down his cheeks, but he said nothing. Barenziah tried to smile. So we both get what we want, eh? I'm to be Queen of Mournhold, and you'll be Lord of your own farmstead. She took his hand, smiled at him warmly, genuinely. I'll write you, Straw, I promise. You must find a scribe so that you can write me too. Straw shook his head sadly. When Barenziah persisted, he opened his mouth and pointed at it, making inarticulate noises. When she realized what it was, his tongue was gone. It had been cut off. Barenziah collapsed onto a chair and wept noisily. But why? She demanded of Simicus when Straw had been ushered away. Why? Simicus shrugged. He knows too much. He could be dangerous. At least he's alive, and he won't need his tongue to raise pigs or whatever. I hate you, Barenziah screamed at him, and then abruptly doubled over and vomited on the floor. She continued to revile him between intermittent bouts of nausea. He listened stolidly for some time while Drillane cleaned up after her. Finally, he told her to cease, or he would gag her for the journey to the Emperor. They stopped at Katisha's house on the way out of the city. Simicus and Drillane didn't dismount. All seemed normal, but Barenziah was frightened as she knocked on the door. Katisha answered the knock. Barenziah thanked the gods silently that at least she was all right. But she'd also obviously been weeping. In any case, she embraced Barenziah warmly. Why are you crying? Barenziah asked. For Theris, of course. You haven't heard? Oh dear, poor Theris. He's dead. Barenziah felt icy fingers creeping around her heart. He was caught stealing from the commandant's house. Poor fellow, but that was so foolish of him. Oh, Barry, he was drawn and quartered this very dawn by the commandant's order. She started to sob. I went. He asked for me. It was terrible. He suffered so before he died. I'll never forget it. I looked for you and Straw, but no one knew where you'd both gotten to. She glanced behind Barenziah. It's the commandant, isn't it? Symmachus. Then Katisha did a strange thing. She stopped crying and grinned. You know, the moment I saw him, I thought, this is the one for Barenziah. Katisha took a fold of her apron and wiped it across her eyes. I told him about you, you know. Yes, Barenziah said, I know. She took Katisha's hands in each of hers and looked at her earnestly. Katisha, I love you. I am going to miss you, but please don't ever tell anyone else anything about me. Ever. Swear you won't, especially not to Symmachus. And look after Straw for me. Promise me that. Katisha promised, puzzled though willing. Barry, it wasn't somehow because of me that Theros was caught, was it? I never said anything about Theros to him. She glanced over at the general. Barenziah assured her that it wasn't, and that an informant had told the Imperial Guard of Theros' plans, which was probably a lie, but she could see that Katisha plainly needed some kind of comfort. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. If I can be glad of anything just now, I'd hate to think, but how could I have known? She leaned over and whispered into Barenziah's ear. Symmachus is very handsome, don't you think? And so charming. I wouldn't know about that, Barenziah said dryly. I haven't really thought about it. There have been other things to think about. She explained hurriedly about being Queen of Mournhold and going to live in the Imperial City for a while. He was looking for me, that's all, on orders from the Emperor. I was the object of a quest, nothing more than some sort of a goal. I don't think he thinks of me as a woman at all. He said I didn't look like a boy, though. She added in the face of Katisha's incredulity. Katisha knew that Barenziah evaluated every male she met in terms of sexual desirability and availability. I suppose it's the shock of finding out that I really am a queen, she added, and Katisha agreed that yes, that's true, that must have been something of a shock, although one there was no likelihood of her experiencing firsthand. She smiled, Barenziah smiled with her, and then they hugged again, tearfully for the last time. She never saw Katisha again, or Straw. The royal party left Riften by the Great Southern Gate. Once through, Symmachus tapped her shoulder and pointed back at the portals. Thought you might want to say your goodbye to Theros too, Your Highness, he said. Barenziah stared briefly but steadily at the head impaled on the spike above the gate. The birds had been at it, but the face was still recognizable. I don't think he'll hear me, although I'm quite sure he'll be pleased to know that I'm fine, she said, seeming to sound light. Let's be on our way, General, shall we? Symmachus was clearly disappointed by her lack of reaction. Aye, you heard of this from your friend Katisha, I suppose. You suppose correctly. She attended the execution, Barenziah said casually. If you didn't know already, he'd find out soon enough. She was sure of that. Did you know Theros belonged to the guild? She shrugged. Everyone knew that. It's only lower-ranking members like me who are supposed to keep their membership secret. The ones higher up are well known. She turned to smile archly at him. But you must know that, shouldn't you, General? She said sweetly. He seemed unaffected by this. So you told her who you were and whence you came, but not about the guild. The guild membership was not my secret to tell. The other was. There's a difference. Besides, Katisha is a very honest woman. Had I told her, it would have lessened me in her eyes. She was always after Theros to take up a more honest line of work. I value her good opinion. She afforded him a glacial stare. Not that it's any concern of yours, but do you know what else she thought? She also thought that I'd be happier if I settled down with just one man. Of my own race. One of my own race with all the right qualities. One of my own race with all the right qualities, who knows to say all the right things. You, in fact. She grabbed the reins preparatory to assuming a brisker pace, but not without sinking in one final irresistible barb. Isn't it odd how wishes come true sometimes, but not in the way you want them to? Or maybe I should say, not in the way you would ever want them to. His answer so took her by surprise that she quite forgot about cantering off. Yes, very odd, he replied, and his tone matched his words exactly. Then he excused himself and fell behind. She held her head high and urged her mount onward, trying to look unimpressed. Now what was it about his response that bothered her? Not what he said, no, that wasn't it, but something about the way he said it. Something about it made her think that she, Barenziah, was one of the wishes that had come true. Unlikely as this seemed, she gave it due deliberation. He'd found her at last, after months of searching, it seemed, under pressure from the Emperor, no doubt. So his wish had come true. Yes, that must be it. But in a way, apparently, not altogether to his liking.
Alright, let's try try to at least turn in the debt.
Fight well.
Is there
Is there something I can do for you?
Please join me.
I'm very happy to make your acquaintance.
Such useless creatures.
I'm Mazeline Marion, the Breton Guild Guide. I provide instantaneous transport between various mages guild halls in Vardenfell. What is your destination? I can also help with local information. Do you need services? Are you looking for some specific place or for someone in particular?
Just 5 please.
Welcome to Vivek, Caius. I'm sure you have some questions. What would you like to know?
No, I thought that was a Daedra heart for a second. Oh, but that's a Daedra heart. That one is definitely a higher priority acquisition. Now let's see if I can afford it.
You seem like very good company.
Yeah, it looks
Greetings,
quite
student.
different.
A pleasure to meet you.
Welcome, friend. The day is yours. Watch.
Yes, Outlander, what do
Watch
you...
yourself. We'll have no trouble here.
Stay as long as you like. It would be a privilege to talk with you.
So I'm rather curious whether or not I can actually turn this in. It's now a bad time.
A hale and hardy
You collect the debt money I sent you for? Where is it? You got the debt money from Lyriel Stoin? Then go get it, Warder, or you'll never make it to Guardian. Looks like it's all here. Good work, guys. Here, you keep half of it. Lorumbral Grow Aglash thanked me for bringing him the 2,000 gold Lyriel Stoin and owed our client. He actually let me keep half of the money owed.
So I'm only down about 500. Advancement, please.
Your talents are noteworthy, but some question the depth of your devotion. Perform more duties for the Fighters Guild and you'll earn your place.
I've been doing them forever. Alright.
I have a bounty contracted with 500 gold for Adria Vendacia. I have a bounty contract with 500 septons for Adria Vendacia. She's at one of the Census and Excise buildings in Saint Denis. There might be some guards around, though, so watch out.
What did she do to be worth it? I'll admit I'm not too crazy about some of these types of these missions.
Hail, friend.
Apparently, they don't want to talk about this one.
I like what I see.
So this one's a little bit harder for me to figure out what I want to do. Here's one thing I can do. Let's find Gracia's Curio before I go any further. Need to find where I can find Cassia's Curio. That might be the point where I have to end it because it is very late and I still need to.
We're watching you, scum.
I still have some work that I need to get done. But I'll see if I can at least leave it on some Hlaalu progress.
Yes, Outlander, what may I do for you?
Go ahead. Yes, Outlander, how do you do?
Let's make a good impression.
You want me to be your sponsor in House Hlaalu? I thought you'd never ask, but first I want to see who I'm dealing with. Show Uncle Crassius what you have to offer. That's right, don't be shy.
If you care to talk, I would consider it a privilege.
Crassius Curio agrees to be my sponsor, but he wants me to take my clothes off. Come on, Dumpling, don't be shy. Just do this little favor for Uncle Crassius.
This may take a minute. The helmet's the last part to come off. Behold. Are you kidding me? The rings too?
Yes, I see we're going to get along just splendidly, sweetie pie. You'll go far with my support. You're now a kinsman of House Hlaalu. Took my clothes off for Crassius Curio, and he is now my sponsor in House Hlaalu.
Gotta remember which ones I had equipped. Just trying to think if I dropped any of these items. All right. I hope that's right.
Glad you stopped by, Caius. I may have some business to discuss with you.
What are we looking at?
Speak with Aldral Helvi in Caldera. Turn your charms on him, sweetie, and talk about business. If you feel his request is questionable, speak with me for further directions. Keep Uncle Craxus well informed, and I'll reward you.
Please join me.
I think I want to be alone for a while. And on that note, I'm sorry for it being a shorter episode, but it is very, very late, and I still have some work that I need to do, so I will try and restore whatever mods aren't working properly for next week. And otherwise, thank you for watching, and we'll be back next time for a full episode.